Hello, and welcome to our fifth Chalk Talk on Agile Data Integration. In this fourth step in our data integration process, the analyst once again is working closely with the developer or developers to create what's called a mapping specification document. And the analyst is basically asking the questions, which source attributes map to the target attributes, and what transformations and rules are required to map the sources to the targets. The analyst would typically do this in a spreadsheet, such as Excel. They're going to create this mapping document, and within the mapping document, the analyst will add sources and targets, typically the sources to the left, targets to the right, provide some textual description in one of the columns to describe how the source field should map to the target. And so they'll describe the transformations between the source and target based on the requirements. Then the analyst would typically email this to the developer or upload it to some central content management repository. The developer would download it, take a look at it, and then in the case where it's not exactly clear what the analyst is describing, the developer will need to go back to the analyst, once again probably through email exchanges, to get some clarification. And in some cases, the developer will likely recommend a source to target field mapping, given that the developer is possibly more intimately familiar with the application data sources and targets that are being mapped. So there's a lot of back and forth going on here, and it's not always clear as to the spreadsheet version, which is the most current version, and therefore some confusion can result there. For each of these source to target mappings, the analyst does need to verify that it meets the requirements, and so the developer may need to do a bit of prototyping and maybe even create a data dump or send the output of that mapping back to the analyst so that they can confirm that it's working or meeting the requirements. So you can see here that there's a lot of manual steps. There's room for miscommunication. It's error prone. It's very time consuming. A lot of non-value added activity. Some opportunities to improve the process here would be to once again provide a intuitive purpose-built tool for the analyst where they can define the specifications and actually generate the mapping logic and preview the results of the specification directly within that tool. And if the mapping specifications and all this logic were stored in a central common metadata repository along with the business glossary, then it'll be much easier to share this information between the stakeholders. In addition, it'll be easy for both the analyst and the developer to find and understand the objects and relationships. So let's take a look at what the to-be process could be using Informatica. Once again, we'll go back into the Informatica Analyst tool, and in this case, let's assume that we've found the data objects required for this project, and the data sources we've selected appear off to the left. The target column would appear off to the right, and then simply selecting and dragging the source columns to the right, we can then specify simple pass-through transformations or select from a list of pre-built ETL or even custom ETL and data quality rules and to specify these transformations. You can also provide some textual description here. And so this makes it very easy for the analyst, very intuitive for the analyst to create this mapping specification. In addition, the analyst can define some transformation logic on the fly and create some reusable expressions. Reusable in the sense that by simply checking a checkbox, I can save the rule or expression that I created and make it available to other analysts for other projects. And then I can preview the results of this mapping specification without having to get a developer involved. Let's take a closer look at how we'll do this with a demo. Here we're in the Informatica Analyst tool. We have a couple of objects in our project here, and we're going to create a mapping specification. First thing, of course, is we're going to give it a name. And then we're going to select a folder. We can browse for the source objects. We can select one or more. In this case, we're going to simply select one source object. And now we'll select a target object. And we can see the metadata and the columns in that target. We'll save that. Off to the left, you'll see the source columns. Off to the right, you see the target columns. And we're going to multi-select several source columns, drag them to the right. And we've simply defined the mapping that way, at least for some of the columns. Now for full name, we're going to create a rule on the fly because we're going to need to concatenate the first and last name in order to create the full name. We can select from a variety of functions, character, string, mathematical. We see a nice description of the function, and we can select that, and it will even prompt us for the inputs to this function. In this case, first and last name. And we can edit the expression. In this case, I would like to add a space in between the first and last name. I can validate the expression. Looks good. And because I'm concatenating two fields, I'm going to extend the precision or increase it from 10 to 50. We'll save that rule. And there you go. We have that transformation in place. Now we can preview the results here. So we see the results here at the bottom. I notice that tax ID is listed there. That's a sensitive piece of information that we might want to mask later on. We also see that there's some null fields here, null columns. And so we're going to need to add another data source in order to get that information. So we'll search the business glossary using just a simple business term like product, because we're looking for the product model information. Product catalog looks like a good candidate, and we can look at the metadata here. Yep, that looks about right. So let's add that table as a source. Add the product catalog. And of course we need a join condition, so it'll prompt us for that join condition. In this case we'll join on model number. And because we can do model profiling in the future, we'll be able to actually make recommendations as to what that join condition should be. Once again, we'll multi-select these columns, drag them to the right, and we can preview the results once again. and it looks good. Looks good, all except one issue. Looks like the model number hasn't been standardized. So that might be something we want to fix here. Let's leave a note for the developer to provide a model number standardization rule. Now, in the meantime, the developer can go back into the repository through their developer tool and look at that specification, actually look at the mapping logic that was generated from the specification, review the notes from the analyst, and provide a rule or recommend a rule that the analyst can apply and validate within that specification. Remember, we wanted to standardize the model number and not expose the tax ID, at least mask the task ID. So let's take a look at a second demonstration. Okay, so now the analyst is going to select a pre-built rule that the developer recommended to standardize the model number. We will select the rule. We see that there's one input and one output. We will specify the input as the product catalog model number, and the output will be in the target, and that's also called model number. We will save that. We will also apply a data masking rule to mask the tax ID. We'll go ahead and put a description there too. And in fact, for any of these columns, I can apply any of a number of pre-built or custom rules. So we will browse for the rule. Once again, this was recommended by the developer. We will select the mask tax ID. We will specify the input column, which naturally is tax ID, and the output in the target will also be the tax ID. Save that and simply preview the results, and there you go. The tax ID has been masked, and we'll check on the model number to see if that in fact has been standardized. Yes, it has. It says Motorola Droid Pro instead of Motorola Droid Pro. Looks good. Now let's run this mapping specification for deployment. And that concludes our 5th Chalk Talk in our series on Agile data integration. Thank you.